up, Star Wars fans? We are back for another week of Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. As always, I'm Tom. With me is Ryan and Mike. And today, we continue our journey on Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where we pretty much left off from Anakin and Padme leaving the Naboo. So, guys, let's get into this episode. And by the way, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Excited to jump on into this episode.
Absolutely. Like I said, let's get into it.
Liking the new background, Tom. I'm liking the new background. Looking real nice.
Absolutely. Yes. A lot of change has been happening in the household. So more Star Wars stuff, like folks. So
nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Impressive. Most impressive.
I like that. I like what you did there.
Yeah. So to start off, we have some more interactions between Anakin and Padme, and then obviously Anakin and Obi-Wan. And one, we see this continuing of, early, I'm going to say flirting between Anakin and Padme. Anakin kind of failing to do so, pretty much, getting like shot down and belittled by Padme in the beginning. But we are left off with an assassin had attempted to kill Padme. They've decided that the safest action was to send Padme and Anakin back to her home planet of Naboo to go into hiding. While Obi-Wan stays back and attempts to investigate the assassination attempt. So what do you guys think about this opening scene we got with this transport ship to Naboo?
I thought it was funny. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'll let you start off, Tom. I'll end it with something else.
Oh, mine was going to be simple. It's like, I love the fact that they said travel as refugees, but their wardrobe just screams out like, we're not refugees at all. I mean, for God's sakes, Anakin's wearing a vest and a scarf and all that stuff.
And we don't get any information on where are they refugees from? Like, they're leaving the city of Coruscant to go to Naboo, which Naboo is the only place that kind of recently had a war, right? Or a battle.
I mean, it's kind of hard. I mean, especially with Padme with her wardrobe. Yeah, I mean, to Tom's point, you would think that you would want to dress down a bit, but hey, they had R2 with them, so what could possibly go wrong?
I love that line.
It was good. And he did protect him. He even got him food from a bartender that, yet again, didn't want to serve a droid. A droid who said, no droids. I thought that was interesting.
So funny. It's just pretty much like we're going back to like the whole no droids thing. It's just like, yo, that's just a droid that's serving food to people, but it won't serve the droids. Like, he just hates his own kind.
Well, I assume, can droids hate? Or is it just programming?
Programming.
Could be a quite serious discussion we could get into there. Yeah, are droids capable of hate? Yeah, I mean, in that sense, like, yeah, we get this, and I talked about it, I believe, last episode, where I got into kind of the biases against droids, and in my mind it was like justified because of the war that's basically about to happen. So where is this no droids coming from? Like, what's the background on this? I assume this carrier, unless it's a Naboo, I mean, it is going to Naboo, so I guess Naboo probably doesn't like droids after what recently happened, so maybe that's it.
Well, I think remember, this is 10 years after the Battle of Naboo. So this could be a little animosity towards droids because after the offense of the Battle of Naboo.
The battle, yeah. Yeah. So I forget that it is that we have that 10-year window. Which is a giant hole that has not been we've not gotten info, right? It's another part of this story that we're kind of missing, and maybe they'll do it, maybe they'll move on, who knows. So with that, Mike, did you have something else you wanted to talk about for that scene?
No, I was just wanted to end it with they had R2, so
It did have R2.
Yeah, start so.
And then we move on to uh the archives.
actually we
Or
got
no, is it oh no, we move on to the diner.
the diner. Yeah,
That's right. So we meet Dex, great character, and a waitress or server droid,
Can
who's
I just
kind
say
of
this about that scene too? Before to interrupt you, when we get into that, I love that it's going to a diner, like and the music that they were playing, it gave me like this old like detective noir back in the day, trying to. It had those vibes towards it, and it was just like, if you
well,
want
and that
information,
yeah,
I go to the diner.
and that's kind of what's going on, right? I mean, we got Obi-Wan being like a detective. He's trying to do detective work, and he's going to talk to an old friend that he thinks might have information on the dart, that the poison dart that had killed our assassin. Um, I do want to, before we talk about the important part, I do want to talk about the fact that the waitress uh, takes an order from Obi-Wan Kenobi and says she's going to bring him Jawa juice. Do we know what Java juice is?
oh,
It's just, are they juicing Jawas? Like,
You blind droid now.
it's not like the Jawas are producing juice. We know they, well, right now we actually, we haven't even met a Jawa yet, chronologically, right?
I
well,
think
yeah,
technically,
we saw one in the
episode.
episode one during. Did we not see one during episode one during the pod race?
Yeah,
oh, there
there.
are some Jawas during the
Yep.
pod race. That's right. That's right. I forget that we were already on Tatooine. But yeah, so interesting that they sell something called Jawa juice.
So I looked it up, by the way. I asked what Jawa juice is, and it gave me Ardis, also known as Jawa juice, was a beverage that originated on Tatooine and was made of bantha hides mashed with fermented grains. So pretty much,
So it's not vegan.
Star Wars is anti-vegan.
Yeah, interesting. So it's a meat and grain. So it's, I guess, like an attempt at a beer,
Is it
mashed grains
version
and
of a protein shake or something?
old meat. Yeah, I don't know. The hides. It's very, very interesting. I'm sorry, I don't want to go too far into Jawa juice, but Mike, you look like you wanted to start talking about the Dex conversation.
No, I mean it's just. I mean, one thing I'll just point out too. Obi-Wan references an archive, so I guess there's a deleted scene where Obi-Wan does like first goes to a spot within the Jedi Temple and asks them to investigate it, and then they come up with nothing. So that's what prompted Obi-Wan to visit Dex in the first place. So yeah, it seemed like they were old friends, and just Dex was having a good old time making fun of those droids in the archives. As it was like, oh yeah, I know this from my old prospecting days, and what you got there is a Camino saber dart. So
Which leads us back to the archives.
yeah,
Um, and now that we're watching chronologically, we know that Camino is not in the archives anymore because we watched Dooku delete them, erase them from the archives. And he, I mean, it's kind of cool now watching Tales of the Jedi first and then this that we now get that. Because at this point, watching not chronologically, but in order that it came out, we don't know who deleted it from the archives. Right? It's kind of a mystery. So that's fun. We get a little more Yoda. We get a little, which I wanted to point out because I noticed it and then I thought it was funnier because later on there's another scene. But when they look at the map and it's the little ball that he puts in the map reader and it pulls up, when Obi-Wan goes to leave, he uses the Force to get the ball back as opposed to like walking over and picking it up. And And I just want everyone to remember that because I want to bring up something later on that I felt like was kind of interesting and kind of paralleled that in a sense. But anything we want to talk about with the discussion between Yoda and then obviously seeing a bunch of younglings?
Going back to the archives, I don't want to take Mike's fun fact away. I don't know if you use or we're going to use this as a fun fact.
Deep dive.
Or a deep dive, yes. All right, so we got a new one. Fun fact. Fun fact. You got 4 parts to the show now. Fun fact. When you look at Obi-Wan in the Jedi archives, he is staring at a bust of a head of a statue. Turns out that statue was Count Dooku.
Yep. And those busts in the Jedi archive were the Lost 20, which were 20 Jedi Masters who left the Jedi Order throughout its history, including Count Dooku. So
interesting. Why did they make statues of them?
Probably to honor them in some way, but according to the Star Wars Wikipedia page, the Lost 20 became disillusioned with the Jedi way of life. So as we can see with Count Dooku, I mean, we don't really know how we all see it from Tales of the Jedi, but no one else in the Jedi Order knows how exactly Count Dooku fell to the dark side. They just assumed that he left and that was it. He didn't really know that, he got influenced by Sidious.
Well,
killed Yaddle.
I was gonna say there's one person in the Jedi who does, but she's dead.
Yep. But I guess it just probably before they turned away from the Jedi Order, they obviously did some big stuff, and that's their way of honoring those Jedi who left who left the Order. So
very interesting. I didn't catch that, so good catch.
Yeah, so just going back to, it's funny because like at the beginning, it's like, oh, it's hard for us to see the dark side and all of that, but when Obi-Wan puts the map in, the little kid figures out, oh, hey, someone erased it from the archive memory. It's just like, wow, it's like you have a 900-year-old Jedi Master who can't see the dark side, but somehow this little kid can figure out, oh, well, someone erased Kamino from the archive memories.
So, it kind of gives it that
of
the innocence of a child through an innocent child's eyes, where it just pretty much they can see much clearer than a full-grown Jedi who's just, they're spread out, with the chaos because the separatist movement is growing faster and faster, and it's hard to keep peace. So
I like to think watching that scene that Yoda knew the answer.
yeah.
And was not saying it as a teaching moment. That's what I thought. I always consider Yoda wise. I think Yoda knew, well, obviously it was deleted, but figured, oh, let's see what the kids think. And then it was a teaching moment, one for the kid, but then also 2 for Obi-Wan as a, maybe you need to not always go to the oldest, wisest person to ask your question sometimes. A new perspective and stuff. So I like to think, at least when I watched it, I was under the impression that Yoda knew the answer. That somebody deleted it, but of course then the question is who, which we then learn in a future scene, but we can jump to it, that Yoda and Mace are quite aware that they basically admit that their ability to use the Force has been dampered for some reason, that they seem to have lost a connection in a sense, but we know it's being fogged by a powerful Sith who is fogging their ability, I guess, for foresight.
Yeah, that bothered me too, in a way, to a degree, that you're supposed to be guardians of peace, all that stuff. You're Jedi. Everyone assumes you're all powerful. To inform the Senate that your use of the Force is diminished, really just, the best way I can describe it is it opens up rings a dinner bell for the dark side that's clouding their system to the point where they're like, it's working. They can't foresee everything that's going on with the chaos that's erupting. And I want to continue talking about that more later on.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
go-
we can hop back to that later.
Yeah.
So I guess we kind of jump back to some more scenes on Naboo, where the love story continues. I guess this is as good a time as any to bring up. Um, I feel like, you know, in Phantom, when we watched Phantom Menace, we talked about the music, specifically Duel of Fates, and how that song is just awesome. Kind of almost, I'd say, stands up to some of the original trilogy songs. And
Dude,
I
I
will
was
say, rewatching this
on my
one,
playlist this morning. I listened
yeah.
for a walk, and my headphones were just on fire because how good that song is, man. I got pumped up at the gym.
So it's a different obviously type of song, but I gotta say the love song that plays throughout this one for Anakin and Padme, which I believe is called Across the Stars.
Yes.
Very also kind of reminiscent, reminds me a little bit, and it's kind of funny because you really don't get the love story in the first, and again, jumping ahead from our chronological, but in A New Hope, you really don't get a love story as much as I feel like you do in later on with Empire Strikes Back, and then of course Return of the Jedi, and in there you get some love music too. But that being said, I think this is it's a good song. The Across the Stars
I
love
do
theme
have another
really
fun fact, by the way.
tugs at you a little bit.
Another
Go
fun
ahead.
fact is that scene on Naboo. Actually, that place is actually legit real. It is in Lake Como, Italy.
Yeah, I've seen people post pictures from being there and stuff. I think I saw somebody post that they actually got married there at like the same scene where
Oh Jesus!
uh
I
they
just
were
thought
kind
of
of
so.
standing looking
I
over the
just thought
thing.
of a joke so bad with that
Yeah,
scene and where it's located. I'll tell you guys after because I don't want this video to get demonetized.
Um, but
yeah. I mean, two things I will say from that is just like number one, Padme rejected Anakin as a Jedi Master. The big joke is always Mace Windu, like you're in the council, but we don't grant you the rank of the Master. But when the aide says, what are your thoughts about this Master Jedi?" Padme was very quick to shoot him down. It's like, boom, roasted. So
yeah,
that was
he gets roasted a lot this portion. It seems like any advances he makes towards Padme, kind of, you know,
But I
Well,
feel
in the first one too, you'll always be that silly little boy I met on like
oh,
Tatooine,
Tatooine. Like he gets it. Um,
and
which
then
so
which
before
actually
we go to
like,
Camino, let's finish the discussion. I know it's out of order, but let's wrap up the Naboo discussion just because.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, Mike, with the jokes about him getting roasted by Padme, uh, is because I sense that conversation between those two. It was like Anakin was having this sense of he's a Jedi. He's gonna protect her because he wants to use his lightsaber. He wants to use Force in a way. But Padme is looking at it as like, this is my home planet. I know the ins and outs. Like I can keep us away and hide and no one will ever find us. Because that is like legit good strategy right there. Because historically speaking, it's like your surrounding areas, where people can find you and where people can't find you, you know? So she's using her knowledge to an advantage.
Yeah, and then we do get obviously the discussion in the field, where I think we get another glimpse at Anakin's dark side, right? We get the po- the politics discussion and how, he's like, well, everyone should just get together and have a discussion, and when they agree on what's best, that should be it. And she's like, yeah, that's a really naive and dumb thing. Like, of course that's what we do, Anakin, but people don't always agree. And his immediate like reaction is, well, they should be made to agree. And it is. He's a child. I mean, he is a very childish outlook.
Let's just
And
call
she
let's
says it
call
seems
it
like
what
it's
it
a
is.
dictatorship.
Anakin is just very confused because Anakin is a very, very horny boy right now.
I mean, he definitely seems to be thinking with his heart, we'll say, in
He's thinking with his head.
but in all this, no, I mean, no, because I want to say he's thinking with his heart in all this episode because we then know where the story of them on Naboo ends, and that's with him having a dream of his mother and basically saying, there's no choice, I have to go and I have to save her. And again, it's not thinking like, hey, you're on a mission, you're doing something. It's really, he lets his heart drive him to make his decisions. So, which we will soon see how that winds up for him, if you should follow your heart or follow your head, kind of a thing. I do wanted to point out in the continued saga of making Anakin feel bad about himself. At one point, he levitates the pair for Padme using the Force, and he says, Obi-Wan would be so upset if he knew I was doing this. And I realized, I was like, Obi-Wan did the exact same thing with that map. Like, there was no need for Obi-Wan to force pull the map over to him. It was just him being lazy and not walking over and grabbing it, showing off for a bunch of kids, maybe. What's the difference of him doing that and Anakin using it to cut and eat a fruit? Like, I feel like it was the exact same use of the Force in a sense. Wasn't doing it to protect himself, to save nothing like that. And it's just so funny that Anakin now has just been so belittled constantly by Obi-Wan that he now knows, like, oh, man, he'd be so upset if he knew I was doing this.
So I think that's what it is. It's like a psychological mentality right there, where it's just pretty much like he says, "Oh, Obi-Wan's going to be disappointed if I do this." He's getting to a point where it's just like he's still young, and he never had a father, and the person who really was supposed to be his mentor, someone who actually could work with him, died 10 years ago, R.I.P. Qui-Gon, and now he's got Obi-Wan, who I think in a way he just got Anakin by force of hand, where it's just like I have to obey Qui-Gon's last wish. So it's like it's a really constant struggle battle between those two, where it's just like we'll see it going forward later on when we dive into episodes of spoiler alert, the Clone Wars. But yeah, it's a psychological issue with him. He's like, he doesn't want to disappoint him, but he wants to show off what he's learned, just to be like, you've taught me so well, I can do more. I can do more.
So with that, do we want to hop over to Camino, or Mike, did you have something you want to say about the Naboo scenes?
Yeah, just before we jump over to Camino, I'll just say some other things I caught was just that there was a name drop of Newt Gunray. Clearly, after everything that happened with the invasion, he got off scot-free. So we kind of see that another recurring theme with politics failing. You would think that someone like a Newt Gunray, who did this big droid invasion, he probably would have been tried and probably would have been in prison, or who knows for how long. But I think it was 4 trials that he was still considered the viceroy of the Trade Federation. So he had that. And then, not to mention, with the whole Anakin Padme thing, of course, he quote dropped the sand meme of how it's
Of course.
rough, coarse, irritating, gets everywhere. And then he contrasts it to the whole, well, here it's, and then he goes in for his move to kiss Padme, and then of course you hear the music go, and then just abruptly stops. So it's like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. But piece of advice: never take any romantic advice from Anakin. So, and just like with the way, and just like going back to what we were talking about earlier too, like Anakin's like doing all these things, but when he brings up, oh, I've been dreaming about you, that's just like a major killer. So it's just like, I'll talk about like how you like dream of her every day, and like getting to that whole discussion after dinner at the fireplace, how like that kiss haunts him. And so never take any romantic advice from Anakin.
I don't know, Mike.
Kids, remember.
I mean, I don't want to spoil too much of the future, but it kind of works out for Anakin, romantically at least, sort of. He ends up. We'll see. We'll see how the movie ends, but I don't know if it's bad advice. All right, so let's go to Camino. So we get Obi-Wan's cool ship, which has like the Halo like kind of
A Jedi Starfighter. I think that's what it is.
name. Yep.
Delta 7. Yep.
So that's pretty cool.
New planet too, by the way.
And we get a new planet. We get Camino, water planet, with the cloners living on it, working on it.
A new
We
species
get the
too.
we get the new species of Kaminoans, which
yeah.
in some shots look absolutely ridiculous because it's just. And again, I'm sorry to hate on the CGI, but like there's the one shot where it's just like the white CGI background with the white CGI Kaminoans and just Obi-Wan looking like Space Jesus, just glowing almost in the. I was like, this is such a bad shot. But then we get some more fun CGI. I thought it looked kind of cool when we start seeing all the clones, and we start seeing that one they're being made, and we get some names dropped too. One, we get the mention of Sifo Dyas as being the one who ordered the clones, and we find out from Obi-Wan that Sifo Dyas died years ago, at least so he thought. We then get the introduction of Jango Fett and his clone son, Boba Fett. Yeah. So now, obviously, chronologically, we get the unmasking of the assassin of the assassin from earlier in this episode. Non-chronologically, and in order that it came out, we get the unmasking of, though young, but if we know it's a clone, we kind of get an idea that they're probably going to look exactly the same. We get to see what Boba Fett looks like. And again, we won't go too far into a Boba Fett discussion until later movies and shows. But I want to just hit my quote right here, and then we can keep talking. We get the quote from Jango Fett. I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe, which, if you haven't noticed, is sort of referenced. It's a reference of a reference in our the name of our show here. And you will see later on when Jango's son Boba Fett references that same line, says it in a different way that we've then stolen and made the name of our show. With that, let's talk Jango Fett and Baby Boba. What are we thinking?
I think I want to get into my hot take right now. I think when Obi-Wan gets introduction towards Jango Fett, I think Jango intentionally left his door open for Obi-Wan to peek at what was in the background, what he's trying to block, the armor. Because all he's seen from him so far, when that dart hit Zam Wesell during Coruscant, during the assassination to kill the other killer, pretty much
Zeb, right? Zeb.
I thought it was Zam.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he intentionally wanted him to take a look because I think he wants him to try to use his Jedi powers or his sense of his force sense of like, this could be the guy. And this hot take also goes into my next hot take. It's all connected. I don't know if you ever seen the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but there's one scene with Charlie who does a crazy conspiracy with all shoestrings and like straining.
Yeah, the red yarn. Yeah,
the red yarn. This is where I'm going with. It's like it's all going to connect at the end with my hot take.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you. I don't know if Boba Fett chose to leave the door open. I do know that, all Obi-Wan knows of the assassin is that armor, so that obviously gives it away. I'm curious, we talk about how you have Anakin versus Obi-Wan and how they make decisions, and if Anakin was with him, I think at that exact moment that he saw the armor, I think Anakin would have immediately drawn his lightsaber and attempted to arrest or worse. But instead we get an Obi-Wan who sees it, has verified he's the assassin, and before he makes another move, goes back, and another quote, when he goes to his droid R4 and asks him to call the Jedi Temple, but he refers to them as the old folks' home. Did you catch that?
Yep.
I
Right.
did.
Obi-Wan just like
Yeah.
just like a throwaway line of Obi-Wan to his own droid, making fun of Mace and Yoda for being old.
Dude,
So I
that's just
thought that
him being
was
sassy. That's just him
comical.
being sassy at all. Remember in episode 1, we just like, you're right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
Yep, it's definitely his little immature self again, making his little, and it was a joke to a droid, to himself, right? There's nobody there to laugh. He literally did it just to make himself laugh.
All right. So, I mean, some of my other takes while they're on Camino, obviously when Obi-Wan has that conversation with Django, he communicates, oh, well, you must have known Master Psycho Diaz, and he just like, nope, never heard of him, and gets into a man name called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I believe this was something that was explored in, I don't know if this is considered canon at all, but a video game called Bounty Hunter back in the early 2000s.
This was, I agree with you. Like, I don't know if it was canon or not. The video game was centered around Jango Fett, and the last level was him meeting Tyrannus after he killed a former apprentice of him, was called Kamari Vosa, who I'll look it up. She was involved with some cult that definitely dealt with death sticks and spice.
Was it the Pikes? No.
No. This was completely different. It was like
Black Sun. I mean, I'm just trying to think of some of the organizations that.
But we're getting a little too far away from canon. We're gonna lose people here.
Yeah, but
I gotta dial us back in.
Yeah.
I know, but just I figure now, like Obi-Wan's like, well, what's really going on here? Now, first it was just tracking down the assassin. Now, just like this whole, well, what's going on with this clone army now that they've got 200,000 ready with 1 million more on the way. So it really opens up, looks like there's more going on here. And Obi-Wan's like, well, I don't think they're involved. And Yoda's like, oh no, like clear your mind, be focused on this. Um, and then
Well,
afterwards, it's like, then, they're like, oh, well, we got to bring him in for questioning. But just like, with the Jedi Starfighter, it's like, well, how's Obi-Wan going to bring Jango with just the one that small of a ship?
good point. They didn't really think that one through. But we do, we don't know who Tyrannus is, but we will find out maybe. Probably by the end of this film, I think, if my memory serves me correctly.
no, actually, no. We don't find it at the end of this film.
Are you sure?
We're gonna we will find out.
Well, we'll see.
Later on. But then this is also the first time.
My memory serves me correctly.
And then chronologically speaking, this is the first time that we see a Mandalorian in action against the Jedi.
So is Django a Mandalorian?
So this was a very big debate because a lot of people, some people believe he wasn't like a Mandalorian. He was just a bounty hunter who acquired the armor. Some people believe he was a foundling.
I think it gets answered later on in my memory because I've only watched through the Tales of Boba Fett once. But I want to say that I believe it gets referenced in the Tales of Boba Fett because there's a discussion about whether or not Boba earned his armor or should have his armor, and then I think there's a discussion of where it came from. So we'll have to see. That's a little down the line, but I don't know if he's is he a Mandalorian?
Also,
now that we have so much Mandalorian lore that we didn't have originally, but
we
again,
saw some new weapons too. By the way, we saw the missile of a jetpack, and we saw Django's dual pistols.
Yep, and we saw grappling hook zipline thing and spiky gauntlet.
Yep. And
flamethrower.
I don't. I mean, it's part of a Mandalorian's arsenal, but I don't think we saw it in this exchange between him and Obi-Wan because it was just mostly, using the jetpack, shooting the pistols, the rocket. But then obviously, Django lost his jetpack, and he's slipping off the edge, so he has to hit the button to release the cable. Obi-Wan goes flying and uses the Force to save himself. And then we also see Obi-Wan throw a tracker on Django's ship. And for
Yes.
those of you that don't know, that's Slave One. That's the OG ship from that Boba flew, but starts off with Django. And then one
is that the fire spray? I'm trying to look it up. I remember the name of it is because that ship was in the video game Mike Bounty Hunter about Jango Fett. That's how he acquires the ship.
And then one other thing I caught was like as Django was boarding the ship, you hear like the doink for the door hitting his head, and I think that was like for people reference that time when when the door closed on a stormtrooper in episode 4. So people made that connection as well. That one scene right before he boarded Slave One.
So yeah, I just looked it up, and Slave One, Django's ship is a Fire Spray 31 class patrol and attack craft.
So I think we've got at least 2 new ships.
Yeah.
And then also the cargo ships that bring
transport ships, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's like a ferry, right? It's got a bar on it.
Space ferry.
Yeah, space ferry. Yeah, you're right. We do. We get the ships, we get the weapons, force power. I mean, we pretty much just get the pushing and the pulling and the mention of the Jedi mind trick. And I think this might be. No, that's not. Never mind. I was going to say I think Watto had mentioned that. Well, that the trick wouldn't work on him, but I wonder if this is the first mention that we get where it only works on the simple-minded, right?
Weak-minded, yeah.
Weak-minded. So that was kind of cool too. Anything else for this episode? Tom, you want to wrap up your hot take?
No, my hot take was pretty much Django leaving the door open. That was pretty much it. So I got nothing.
All right. And Mike, anything else? Any other deep dive?
No, not really. I mean, I think I saw something else about the bus, but I'll have to go back and I'll probably have to tell what it is in the next episode. But I didn't really have any other deep dives for this one. So for anyone who is watching and where we are in episode 2, we are at the end of the Camino scene, and we're about to see Anakin and Padme go to Tatooine to rescue his mother.
All right. And with that, Mike?
It's a wrap. Well, thank you everyone for joining 3 Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe, and come back next week for some more Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones content. May the Force be with you, always.